Today on Hearts of Heroes, a day of four-wheeling goes from fun to frantic for a father and his two young children.
They entered the high water and the Jeep was washed downstream here.
Floodwaters rising, a swiftwater rescue team has to make a daring rescue.
We weren't sure if it was going to get turned sideways, which would be the worst case scenario. I don't want to attack.
Plus, an apartment fire traps a teenage boy and his dog in smoke and flames.
Anybody inside? Yell out to me!
There's a lot of smoke and people running around trying to get away from the fire.
First responders weren't going to let tragedy strike on this day. Dried up washes and riverbeds in Arizona are often used as an outdoor playground for four-wheelers and motorcyclists.
But during monsoon season, all the rain starts coming down, and these dusty ravines can easily turn into rapids. Then, if people get trapped inside of them, they can easily be swept away by the powerful currents.
With a population of just over 500,000, Tucson is the second largest city in Arizona. But if you travel outside the sprawling city, you'll find gorgeous desert landscape and breathtaking mountain ranges. The picturesque landscape attracts hikers, campers, and four-wheelers.
People come out here to do various type of recreation. What we get a lot of out here are people coming out riding their mountain bikes, riding their motorcycles, their quads, that type of thing. There are some mountain bike trails, but people will also hike on those trails as well.
Serving a community with such a diverse landscape means Tucson's Special Operations Team has to be prepared for a number of emergencies.
We have a technical rescue team that can do not only swiftwater calls, but hiker rescues. We can do trench collapse, building collapse, a lot of different things on the rope and rescue side.
Tucson's semi-arid climate means that their winters are generally mild, but in the summer, temperatures soar.
First part of the summer usually starts out very hot, and then usually around late July, we have a start of a monsoon season, which brings heavy, unexpected rain sometimes.
When it becomes monsoon season, flash flooding takes over.
A lot of times with our flash floods, if we get those 1 or 2 inches of rain in an hour, we're surrounded by mountains. So all of a sudden you could get a wall of water cross through an area that's completely dry because it's all started to come down from the mountains.
As its name suggests, a flash flood can occur without warning, putting those in its path in extreme danger.
It's not only that the water comes quickly, it's what the water carries. A lot of times the water is more of like a concrete consistency with branches, mud, everything else. So they do present a major hazard for people that are in areas associated with flash floods.
On July 23, 2021, a father and his two young daughters found themselves in this potentially deadly situation. That morning, the family headed out for some four-wheeling in washes outside of town.
The driver told us that he had driven through earlier in the morning and the wash was dry, wasn't running, and they went out to the west side of the wash here, did some four-wheeling. When they were coming back, the water was flowing.
At that point, he decided to take his chances and try to cross the river.
And that's when they entered the high water and the Jeep was washed downstream here.
He and his daughters were suddenly swept into the rushing current.
The vehicle ended up being probably, maybe 75, 100 yards downstream from where they entered the water on the road crossing there.
With the water rising all around them, the father climbed onto the roof of their vehicle and called 911.
The immediate concern with anybody trapped on the roof of a vehicle is the water rising, because once you're on the roof of the vehicle, there's nowhere else to go. So that already told us that we had a very serious situation.
We didn't know the ages of the children, so we weren't sure, hey, are these kids able to swim? If they do fall in the water, are they gonna have a big problem with it? So that obviously elevated our response a little bit.
Coming up, rescuers put their lives on the line to save a terrified family.
So we were basically at the maximum risk factor that we would take.
And later, an apartment fire leaves a teenage boy trapped inside.
Well, there's a lot of smoke and people running around trying to get away from the fire.
But now, this safety tip.
You may see a disaster on TV and think, that could never happen to me. But in reality, disasters can strike anywhere, anytime.
Monitoring local law enforcement and weather alerts is an easy line of defense preparing for a natural disaster. This can help keep you and your loved ones out of harm's way.
Remember to listen to the pros. It's their job to keep you safe.
In July of 2021, a father took his 2 young daughters for a fun day of four-wheeling in the washes outside of Tucson, Arizona. But there was a flash flood watch, and sure enough, water began raging. The man tried to drive across a flowing waterway, and his four-wheeler was swept down the river. He scrambled to the roof of his car to look for help, while his 2 daughters stayed inside. The Tucson Special Operations Team was immediately dispatched.
We were very concerned that the water would keep rising before we got there potentially and could possibly sweep those people off the roof.
As paramedic Ryan Zach and firefighter Matthew Gordon approached, there was already a fire engine down at the river. But the heavy rain and narrow road made it impossible for them to get their vehicle into the gorge.
There was a lot of water on the road. There was actually another stream running through that road that we had to cross. So we actually gathered our equipment and hiked it all about a half a mile down to where we were. And that's when we were able to get a better picture.
When we did get a good view of the vehicle, we realized that there was 2 very young children and an adult. At that point, we made a decision that there was very little time to make a plan, and we just needed to execute something to get these kids out of harm's way.
Rescuers had to rush a game plan. There were so many hazards that they had to analyze it all quickly.
We had a major concern with the stability of the vehicle. As we were formulating a game plan, we had eyes on it, and we could see that it was moving in place, which makes us very concerned.
And we weren't sure if it was going to get turned sideways, which would be the worst case scenario because it could potentially get turned over onto its side from the force of the water.
First responders often make life or death decisions at the drop of a hat. Thankfully, their experience and training helped them to do this.
At that point, we formulated a plan to actually make an in-water entry and go out and get them from the vehicle.
Swift water rescues are really dangerous, not only for the victims, but for the first responders too.
Anytime we have to enter the water, it is one of the more risky operations that we can do. It has a higher level of risk associated with it. There's lots of debris in that water. It's moving quickly, and there is a possibility of the rescuers finding themselves in a situation where they get swept down.
Though it's super dangerous, this special operations team is trained for this kind of mission. And for this water rescue, they employed what's known as a wedge formation.
We make a V pattern with one rescuer, usually the largest guy in the front, and we kind of all support him in a V pattern coming off the back of him. The guy in the front has a tool where he can kind of feel where he's going to step next and also kind of anchor him a little bit.
The first couple steps we took into the water, we could definitely feel the speed of it. We also noticed there was quite a lot of debris in the water, tree branches, things of that nature were running into us.
To make matters worse, the water was getting deeper.
Within 20 feet, we came up quite significantly up to our waists, which is really kind of the max that we can do while we're actually doing that kind of pattern. So we were basically at the maximum risk factor that we would take. We did know that there was 2 kids there that needed some help, so we were kind of pushing that boundary a little bit.
Within a matter of minutes, they made it out to the family.
When we got to the vehicle, we could definitely tell that the 2 girls that were on the top of the car were very scared. One of my partners grabbed the children from the roof. He handed one of the daughters to me. He took the other daughter.
And then we were able to make our way back to the shoreline, make sure that they were safe, and then go back for the father.
We got him off the roof. We put him in our eddy, put a hand on him, so he was in a little bit slower moving water, and then we made access back to the shore again. As we got him back to the shore, they were still terrified, but they were very relieved and were ready to basically be out of that situation.
Like all heroes, these first responders put their own safety on the line in order to help those in peril. And the results were nothing less than miraculous.
The rescue honestly could not have gone better. Once we watched the second kid get grabbed safely, everybody kind of had a cheer because we knew if they got the kids, we would be okay. We needed that to go well, and that was like our big relief moment.
No one was more relieved or more grateful than the family themselves for these rescuers who put their own safety on the line.
There's a saying in the fire service, we risk a lot to save a lot, meaning that there was a lot at stake at this thing, so we were willing to risk our potential safety to help these kids out.
Coming up, 2 police officers jump in to save a teenager trapped in a burning apartment.
We could tell that there was quite a bit of fire going on at that time.
Fire! Anybody inside?
Police officers are always ready to jump in and respond to a number of different types of emergencies. But you might be kind of surprised to find out how often they become an important part of fire rescues.
And even though they may not have the equipment or special training, many times they are the first ones to respond and jump in when a fire erupts.
Just outside of Phoenix sits the suburb of Mesa, Arizona. With a population of just over 500,000, it's one of the largest cities in the state. Mesa is known for its art scene, southwestern architecture, and stunning desert landscapes. It's a place people are proud to call home.
It's the third largest city in Arizona. It's been considered one of the safest cities in Arizona, or in the United States.
It's a great community. The cool thing about being on the motorcycle is the community is able to talk to us. People will roll their windows down and wave at us and tell us how much they appreciate us. It's a great place to work.
The locals aren't the only ones who appreciate the work the officers do. The police themselves also help to support their fellow first responders from the Mesa Fire Department.
The working relationship we have with PD, I feel, is great here. I believe that this working relationship that we have with them is key and vital to success on any call.
They usually show up first for our calls to make sure that they're secure. So we do work hand in hand with them a lot of the time.
In May of 2021, this close relationship would be the key to saving the life of a teenage boy. But the day started out like any other for Amanda Hansing, a working mom with 3 children.
I have a 14-year-old, and I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. My 3 children keep me busy. We're constantly doing something.
That morning, Amanda left to run some errands with her 2 youngest children. Meanwhile, her teenage son Blake stayed home playing video games.
I just was chilling at Mom's house. I woke up that morning, just playing with my friend.
As Blake put on his headset, he had no idea that he was about to experience a genuine life or death situation. A few blocks away, police officers Kyle Stewart and Clint Bertola happened to be working traffic enforcement.
Officer Bertola and I were stopped in a spot that we usually work. A citizen pulled up in an SUV, rolled down his window, and told us that there was a fire down the street. So I got on the radio to let our dispatch know so that we could get the fire department started that way.
The 2 officers hopped on their motorcycles and headed to the scene, not sure what they would find.
In this case, we showed up before the fire department, so our role is to try to get people away from the fire. As we're pulling up, there's smoke all the way out into the street. We're gonna start knocking doors to get people evacuated. Officer Bertola and I parked our motorcycles. We got off and we ran over to where the smoke and the fire was.
While they were not trained in fire rescue, their instincts to help kicked in, and they were going to do whatever they could to make sure that people made it out safely.
The first thing that we think of is trying to make sure that the apartments that are on fire are evacuated, and then those that are adjacent to it are also then evacuated in case the fire spreads.
Hey, please!
The 2 officers began helping people out of the 4-unit apartment complex.
There's 4 apartments in that one building. The first 2, the doors were open, people were coming out of those. And then we noticed that the last 2, the doors were closed, nobody had come out of those 2 apartments.
Meanwhile, 14-year-old Blake had his gaming headset on, unaware that the fire was just outside his bedroom door.
I knocked on number 4, I got no response. Officer Bertola knocked number 3, got no response. Maybe somebody was inside, just couldn't hear us, or was passed out because of the smoke. You don't know, right?
Coming up, with the fire raging, officers have to make a quick decision.
Anybody inside?
And then I asked Officer Stewart to grab something to break the window.
But first, another safety tip.
Did you know that U.S. fire departments respond to nearly 360,000 house fires each year? Here are some fire safety tips.
If a fire starts in your home, exit as quickly as possible and call 911. Never re-enter a burning building after you get out. This only increases your risk of getting seriously harmed.
Remember, get out, stay out, and call the pros for help. You won't regret it.
On the morning of May 20th, 2021, a fire broke out in a 4-unit apartment complex in Mesa, Arizona. Officers Clint Bertola and Kyle Stewart responded to the scene and got people out of the units.
Base, please!
But there was one apartment with no response.
We knocked on the doors, nobody answered. Number 4 was the one that was fully engulfed on the back of the apartment.
14-year-old Blake Macon had a headset on. He was playing video games, and he was unaware that the fire was inside his apartment. Finally, he heard the officers pounding at his front door.
I was chilling there and all I hear is boom, 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 boom. I'm like, what's that?
But thinking it was a package, Blake went back to his game. The 2 officers had to make a drastic decision.
Everybody inside!
I told Officer Stewart that we needed to kick the doors. I kicked apartment 3, he kicked apartment 4.
Anybody inside?
But the smoke and fire were too strong for the officers to enter the apartment.
We don't have all the fire gear, we don't have oxygen. So really you can only do what you know, long enough that you can hold your breath, look inside, make sure nobody's right where you could immediately see.
Base police, anybody inside, come out!
Finally, Blake heard their calls.
Anybody inside, yell out to me!
I heard boom, boom, boom again. It was dude yell out fire because I pulled out my headphone and I was like, oh, well, that's not good.
Blake tried to get out, but the smoke and flames had engulfed his apartment. He headed back into the bedroom and realized the only way out was to break the bedroom window. The officer saw Blake bust out the glass with his bare fist.
Help me, please!
Blake punched the window, broke the window, and then I asked Officer Stewart to grab something to break the window.
I reached inside and was able to find a large metal flask. Used that to break out the window.
The officers broke out the remaining shards of glass and pulled Blake out of the window. He had severely cut his arm, but he was safe. Then Blake told them he wasn't the only one inside.
Anybody else in here? Yes! Where are they at?
So once we got Blake out of the bedroom, he told us that he believed his dog and his dad were still in the apartment.
As Blake started to get first aid, the Mesa Fire Department arrived.
As we were getting off the truck, we had heard reports of a possible victim, so that kind of changes our mindsets. Our primary goal is to look for a victim.
While putting out a fire is their job, whenever there is a life on the line, saving that person becomes the top priority for first responders.
Firefighters Bryce Roche and Eric Brunier rushed into the burning apartment to perform a search and rescue.
We were basically trying to cool it down, look for the seat of the fire, and look for victims.
The 2 men made their way through the smoke and flames to that back bedroom. Suddenly, Kyle Roche felt something at his feet.
I got bumped by what I thought was a human in a white t-shirt, and it was a medium to large sized dog.
This is a good sized dog, white, kind of crawling out the doorway. Once he made it to the hallway, he collapsed. So I picked up the dog, took him out to the front room. Conditions were a lot clearer out there. I was waving for PD or someone to come get the dog so I could go back in. And then they ran up and took him.
Once outside, Blake's dog Opie immediately regained consciousness. At the same time, Blake's mom, Amanda, arrived with her husband.
There was fire trucks, all of these, the cops, the whole 9 yards.
To everyone's relief, they discovered Blake's stepdad was not inside the apartment. Now firefighters could focus on putting out the blaze.
When we had the report of the victim out, you know, it changes our objectives and our decisions of how we're going to fight this fire. So we're going to focus more on the fire, making sure it's knocked down.
It took 3 hours to put out that fire, and unfortunately, Amanda's family lost their home. But they are thankful that everybody stayed safe.
That day, I think I was just in shock because I didn't really feel anything except for relief that he was okay, because really nothing matters besides family. Everything else can be replaced.
Recently, Amanda, Blake, and their dog Opie had the opportunity to meet the men who saved them.
Yeah, the only info that we got was multiple callers and a victim trapped. And we just kind of followed the smoke, and we're getting dressed on the way.
I specified to them, I'm like, my dog and my stepdad are still in there. Please get them.
And luckily, we bumped into the dog. So. I thought it was a human on all fours crawling past me because there was smoke in there. And then I saw a tail, and I started yelling to him that there was a dog. He carried the dog out.
Yeah, I handed him up to another police officer, and they took
so I got him
him
and took
after
him
that.
over.
As soon as I saw Opie, I was like, oh my, thank you.
Well, we're glad he's doing good.
Yeah, me too.
He wasn't looking good at the time, but he's looking great now.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for real. Thank you guys so much.
Our pleasure.
No worries.
I can't thank them enough. I'm so grateful for anything they do, but especially saving my son and my dog. I can't say thank you enough to anybody for that day.
It was very successful. Everyone got out, property could be replaced. We can't replace lives, so it was a success in my book.
Whether it's fire, flood, or really any type of disaster, our first responders are always right there helping to keep us safe.
They never think twice about putting their own safety at risk. And that's what makes these brave men and women true heroes. For them, we are truly grateful.
We sure are. We're also very grateful for you. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.